Get your jazz hands out, everyone. Okay, so just to say thanks for having me here tonight. I'm trying to succinctly summarize something that is representative of the course. So I've put together a few tips for integrated digital marketing. Feel free to ask questions at any stage if you have any. And yeah, it's not too heavy, so don't worry. It's not going to be crazy. So just first of all, I've already introduced myself, but out of interest, how many of you guys are on Twitter by a show of hands? Woohoo! Okay, and how many of you have tweeted tonight? Very good. Okay, that's great. That's brilliant. I'm at Van Valejo, and I haven't tweeted yet. It's coming straight from work, but I will be tweeting. And before I begin, I just wanted to ask how many of you guys, by show of hands, would manage digital campaigns directly? Okay, and how many of you are planning on starting your own digital marketing campaigns? Okay, there's a bit of an ear scratch. I'm the only one. And are there any of you who are actually working with an agency who manage your digital marketing for you? Part of it. Okay, great. It's good. Good to know. So just quickly, we know this already, but media is increasingly fragmented with so many digital touch points, both online and on the offline, but particularly online with search, mobile, display, and social media. Really, I mean, what that means for us as marketers is that media consumption is even crazier, and there's so many touch points, which is why we're constantly hearing on RT every day, big data, and how do we grapple with this? So that's something that this course is definitely going to address in many different ways. And for the next session, just quickly, part of the reason that there is such fragmentation of how we even, in terms of the online space, monitor and track consumer behavior is because 90% of consumers are moving between their smartphone, their PC, their tablets, and their televisions. And actually, Google, my CEO was at a Google conference last week in Mountain View, and they would argue that the fifth screen has arrived. Can anyone guess? What, Finton? Glasses, yes, actually, wearable technology, and actually they said the car. So they have now come out with their self-driving vehicle, which obviously in the future, not too far away, not too distant future, it's driving on its own at the moment, and it can't change lanes, but it can drive on its own. It's driven in 3 different states, and they're using geotechnology mapping sort of position, satellite position technology to actually drive these cars. So in the future, we're going to have a lot of data to deal with. So this is inevitable, and just really important to acknowledge and you know, get the fear, get rid of it, just face up to it. And it's something that I think is really interesting. And ultimately, really, marketing has changed because of fragmentation of how consumers engage with brands. And how they talk about brands online, and how marketers how they communicate to consumers. Actually, nowadays it's a bit like the slide that Colin had put up. The marketer is part scientist, part artist. You know, increasingly you're expected to know more and more. So now we're going to cover just a few quick tips that should hopefully help. And starting really with I think the most important thing that really good brands are doing at the moment is listening. And listening can take many forms. It can take the form of social media monitoring. So are you all familiar with the concept of social media monitoring? Yay, nay? Nay. Few shy? God, people are so shy. Okay. So yeah, that is monitoring online conversations in either, you know, it could be Twitter, it can be boards.ie, it can be any number of you know, spaces online, but typically social media would very much heavily drive that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this and show you an example from an alcohol brand and how they evaluated sponsorship effectiveness. But another way to actually listen to your customers is tracking internal site searches within Google Analytics, and I'll show you an example of that as well. The third way is to let customer questions inform your content strategy. So we do a lot of work in terms of search engine optimization, and choosing the right content that is actually going to stick, with consumers who are visiting the site can be a challenge. But actually, there's a lot of quick wins in terms of listening to what the questions your customers are asking, either in the call center or via the internal site search, and actually taking their questions and answering them directly. There's a whole host of different ways that you can actually just deliver the content that people are already searching for. And the last one is to personalize your communication. So we'll have a look now at an example of social media monitoring. So this looks a little bit crazy. This is actually from a social media monitoring tool called Buzz Tracking. And this is a graph that was done essentially to evaluate the effectiveness of an alcohol brand that was doing a sponsorship of music. And there was a gig at the end of March. So this begins in August, goes to March. In purple, what you see there is mentions of the brand and mentions of the band who are actually performing at the gig. And they were giving away free tickets through email, through SMS, through digital advertising, and as well, on their website. So what you see here is the impact of, essentially we've overlaid media investment on brand mentions and mentions of the brand, or of the band, online, just to show how the interplay between radio, press, investment here, and the actual, in the lead up to the actual gig, which was in March, to show essentially how effective was the media and the different types of media along the way to the actual gig. And this is just sort of one example of the type of insight that you can get from social media monitoring. And essentially, I think that brands are starting to wake up. I've seen instances where banks are actually catching flukes in their online mortgage systems where they're losing money really quickly, where they've been able to actually catch things like that happening, or robberies or things that are actually going wrong by listening. And obviously brands that are perceived to be listening brands tend to have a really happy kind of positive response with consumers. So that's just one example of social media monitoring. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
And you said there you mentioned buzz tracking. Is that some sort of software that's you're sort of using on top of the likes of Facebook and Twitter and stuff?
Yes, so sorry, I just threw that out there. It's a social media listening tool that would mine any public space on the web that is where information is shared publicly. So the likes of Facebook, a lot of users would be sharing content not realizing it's public, or they haven't adjusted their privacy settings, or it would be boards.ie, news sources. Twitter is pretty open in terms of indexing. So it's essentially a tool that will pull all mentions of the brand, and they'll be evaluated on a sentiment basis, positive, negative, or neutral. And then that sort of information can be taken away to actually learn insights about what customers are saying about the business, about the customer service if there's issues, or it can also inform how you even approach social media as a strategy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so it's publicly available, because otherwise
the tool itself would be sort of something that you would pay to use and track. But the information that is being pulled in would be publicly available, yes. Okay. So another example of how you can listen to your customers online is essentially your website. So there's so many websites that I see that go live without Google Analytics tracking. It's unreal. It's disgraceful. That's like bog standard best practice site development. But one of the nice things about having this tracking enabled on your website can be actually having what's called internal site search. So customers found your business either whether it's through organic search, the non-paid natural listings, whether it's paid display or social media or any direct traffic even, and they've come to your site and now they actually haven't found what they're looking for. Well, you can set it up within Google Analytics so that you can actually get the keywords that people are searching after they've arrived onto your site, and that can be a rich source of information in terms of even how you approach content, or if people are searching for something that doesn't exist, maybe you need to come up with an answer to their questions, or just use the data to inform how you actually position them, and how information is placed out on your landing pages or your home page. And that's available within Google Analytics in the site search overview, and then you can see here the search terms. And you can see that 25% of customers are actually using this. So what a great way to get information for free about people who are already pre-qualified because they're on your website. Another method that's quite good is to actually, I said this before, but let customer questions inform your content strategy. So I'll just say they're actually not a client, but they do really good social marketing, and they have a great blog that does, I think, answer a lot of questions that consumers would probably be asking, because who knows what public liability insurance is anyway, right? So they're the kinds of things that can be really, really helpful and engaging for your pre-qualified customers. So I'd encourage any business that has a call center or has access to questions, whether it's over the contact form or whether it's offline in store. I mean, use that's free pre-qualified information. And the last one is personalize your communication. And I don't actually have like a sort of standard way to do that, because it's really unique to every business. But really, I mean, how many of you have ever received an email that says, "Hi," and it's the wrong name? There's a lot of ways to do marketing really badly. And luckily, in the scale of things, marketers are semi-loved. They're not like as bad as lawyers, or no offense to anyone, or there could be far worse, the banks. Where do I go? What do I do? What am I actually looking for? That's a really bad user experience. So landing pages kind of has more to do with usability, but it's hugely important. If you've invested in a website, make sure that your landing pages are working as hard as possible for you. And just a few tips on this. Number one, avoid clutter. Simple. Be eye-catching. So make the design nice, make it easy to use. I have an example of a good landing page after this. List the key benefits of your product. So what are the unique selling points? Why should I buy from you? The attention span is something like less than, I think it's 7 or 8 seconds. So, try to fight for the real estate on the homepage. If you are driving people to the homepage, make sure it's not everyone's agenda. Try and make it as kind of clean and user-friendly and engaging as possible, and deliver what people are looking for. Provide your contact information. Be personal and reassuring where you do have the option of being personal. There's a number of ways to do this. An e-commerce site, it can be through having user reviews. It can be through, having the accreditation of, the industry, or there's a million ways to do that. Number 6, have a clear call to action. We've kind of touched on that already. And the last one really is integrate offline messaging. Absolutely test it if you can. For example, all you can eat data through mobile. That's something that not a lot of people understand. So they've taken ways to change the landing page to make sure that people who are actually searching for that are brought to the relevant page and have a clear explanation of what they're looking for and what does that actually mean. Just an example of a couple of things that can be done to improve a landing page. This is a UK site for, I love cycling, it's for sports, but really having a clear call to action, having suggestions in the e-commerce space, reviews, and then this actually is navigation, really nice clean navigation. You can't actually see it very well because the bar is moved. By now it has a description, guide. Be personable, give people the information they're looking for. And the last point really is define success before you start, because I can't believe the number of briefs that we get where there's no KPI defined, and or there's like 3 KPIs. We want to do everything with this budget. So and I think because digital is so new and for many people overwhelming, including myself because it's changing constantly, it's, you know, the KPIs need to be specific to the medium, whether, you know, it's social, and even Facebook from Twitter, they can be different KPIs. So again, you know, think your KPIs through. I've covered off some of the more obvious ones: site visits, online registrations, online sales, callbacks that can be measured from sort of digital. You can actually drive people to call back on a mobile device through search and track through to the call center. There can be a number of different ways actually that you measure online and the impact it has on offline. Downloads, time on site, and well, that's success for you. So just to recap, tips for integrated digital marketing. Number one, listen to your customers. I think that's actually the most important one. Build good landing pages, actionable landing pages where the consumer knows exactly where they're going and they're brought to the nearest point, the nearest or shortest path to conversion. And define success before you start. And that's it, unless there's any questions.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thank you.